This is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. We're here on the Nintendo Switch. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So what are we getting here in this direct follow-up to Breath of the Wild? Well, it's supposed to be like 900p, but it's got some resolution scaling technology kind of applied, apparently a very basic version of FSR, and it is at 30 FPS. And it does not hold 30 FPS very well, as the performance is constantly tanking while you are playing the game. So yeah, it is, again, very visually and aesthetically close to what was achieved with the technology of Breath of the Wild, which kind of makes you feel as though Breath of the Wild kind of really maxed out just what the Nintendo Switch could do many, many years ago. And with that sort of technical kind of gap being present here, they definitely pushed for something a little bit more interesting in terms of the game physics and some of the technology within this title. So it is basically the same world that was present in Breath of the Wild, but they have redone a lot of it, revamped things, adjusted a lot of stuff, and there's a big play on creation in this game. So in this game, you're given tools where you are able to essentially solve puzzles and do stuff by building things. That's like the biggest new change up in this one. So you can like stick items together in order to, well, I guess fuse items together in order to build stuff. So that's from like, you know, creating things like maybe a car, which is not what I built. I was just trying to show that you can like fuse the stuff together. Or maybe you might find like a weapon or a tool that you can fuse to, say, a sword or a shield and do silly things with. And that's like a big part of the game, where you could ascend and you can go up into the air, and you know that's kind of a big part of the game, is these new puzzle physics. The game opens with a tutorial island, which was honestly a little overly long and didn't really seem to be needed. A lot of the game really does feel a little like tedious to play, a little tiresome to play, but it also very much has that heart and excitement of Breath of the Wild that's present. So if you did enjoy Breath of the Wild, you're obviously going to have a really good time with this one, as it just expands those concepts a little bit further onwards in terms of gameplay and design and what's going on here. So, you know, the same mechanics where you're collecting hearts and stamina, and you are cooking food and exploring and, you know, dealing with the whole Souls-like aspect of Zelda, where it's like you die really intensely. That was actually something that really quite bothered me in this game, was the fact that like literally everything seems to kill you in like 1 or 2 hits. It's pretty wild. Most boss fights, it was literally you were insta killed with every single hit, no matter how many hearts you seem to get up, and yeah. But you do collect, you know, armor very, very, very sparingly. You have to manage food resources, you have to build up your stamina, there's all these shrines. So the shrines, if you're not familiar with them, are these places you go and you do like a quick puzzle thing. Sometimes they're very convoluted, sometimes they're very easy, and you're essentially, you know, you get rewards. So you finish a shrine, you get a light reward. 4 of those you can either use to get like a heart, or you can use for stamina. And yeah, another big part of the game is all of the Sky Islands. So these Sky Islands are these new massive places up above where you can find additional puzzles, and that's typically where your various dungeons and stuff are present, as the game does include, you know, many dungeons for you to check out, which are usually like, hey, go and interact with these items so many times, and you know, that's kind of the biggest part of it. And from a narrative standpoint, I will say this game is much improved over Breath of the Wild in terms of actual storytelling and cutscenes. The opening like 10 to 15 minutes of this game are absolutely spectacular. The ending segment of this game, absolutely spectacular. But yeah, it is also really, it's frustrating. It's difficult, it doesn't hold your hand. A lot of the game will just be like really, really intensely difficult and challenge you in many, many ways that you will either kind of like or won't like and find annoying. And like I said, tedious, tiring, stuff like that is a big part of this game. But it is really genuinely ambitious. I think I lost like 6 hearts kind of on my own on that one. But yeah, that's the thing, is like from a gameplay perspective, this game is like insanely long. I spent about 38 hours moving through this really, really fast. Am I even going to be able to like attack that thing? Holy. And I could easily see most people probably spending at least 40 hours playing this game. Like, it's, you know, it's pretty difficult, it's pretty grueling. Like I said, I moved through it pretty fast, but yeah, this thing is terrifying. Oh my god, this weird Hydra thing, I don't want to deal with this. That is way more intense than I was thinking. I actually kind of wanted to go get my horse, which is over there. So, yeah, it's very, very intriguing. From like a gameplay value perspective, there's very, very few titles out there that will give you such insane gameplay time value. It is genuinely impressive. Why am I being shocked by electricity? Okay. Alrighty, I guess there was lightning in the air. But yeah, that's the thing though, is like, if this is the type, if you like Breath of the Wild, you know, do expect something that is, honestly, it feels more difficult and a little bit more tedious, because it's like they find the things that took a long time in Breath of the Wild and they make those take longer in this game. So, you know, kind of expect that. But if you did love that, this is a lot more of that. And it is the same sort of concept in Mythos. Like, you see a hill over there, you can go there. You see a giant tower over there, you can go there. And that's kind of the design concept, is you can really have that freedom to sort of like, you know, do whatever you want. It's ultimate freedom. And, you know, from a visual standpoint, you know, like I said, Breath of the Wild obviously maxed out what the Switch can do, I think about 6 years ago or something like that. So, like, this one, it does feel like, at least from what I recall, that the grass distance doesn't seem as intense, and the details seem a little lower on some of the stuff. But it still has that visual charm, where I kind of sit there and be like, man, I really wish I could see this on a more powerful Nintendo console. Because I bet this would look just stunning visually. And I wish I could play it at a higher frame rate. Because, again, the performance is not even like a really sturdy 30 FPS. But, you know, it's definitely something... Wow, that was shocking. It's definitely something to marvel at in terms of, like, the amount of game time you get out of it. Like, there's a ton of stuff to it. So if you like what this game is in terms of design and concept, there's a lot to do. And you know what? For the Switch, it does load pretty good. And for the Switch, you know, from a perspective of, like, what we've come to, you know, sort of get used to when it comes to performance and everything like that, you gotta say, like, hey, this actually is about on par what you expect for this platform. And it is really quite, you know, impressive from that perspective. And it's really, again, neat, the physics element of this. Where it's like, you know, you can, like, light the grass on fire. Or if there's a tree, you can cut the tree down. And you can combine multiple trees to build something that, you know, build a boat, build a plane thing, and, you know, that's really, really quite cool. But I do feel like a lot of the really awesome moments are slightly impacted by A, the performance, B, these really aggressively weird, tedious segments that seem to take a long time to do. You know, you get a mech and you don't really feel the power of getting a mech. Or there's a cool segment where you're supposed to do something and then it's like, oh, but you gotta walk up a hill that takes like 10 or 20 minutes, and you know, that kind of stuff to me bogs it down a little bit. It would be nice to have something that was a little bit tighter and maybe something that was a little bit easier going. But this is the type of game people really, really like these days in regards to, like, you know, Zelda and stuff like that. This is the standard. So it very much feels close to Breath of the Wild, but it is very much its own thing. And like I said, you know, there are very, very few games out there that you can sit there and get like 40 hours of gameplay out of. Like that is genuinely impressive. And that's, again, I work through games really fast, faster than most people. So I do believe you'll get at least 40 hours, probably 50 or 60, depending on the type of player you are. And there's a lot to play here. And it's like, do you have the time for that? I don't know. It depends on the individual you are. But if you're down for that sort of thing, this is an adventure that goes like on and on and on. There's a lot to it. And there's a lot of really good narrative and cinematic beats that are present. There's a lot of like literally no hand holding. You're sitting there being like, what am I doing? And, you know, if you like that sense of adventure, that sense of freedom, that feels a little bit more like old school type games where it's like you're not really given any sort of hand holding in the slightest, I think you could really enjoy stuff. I do wish they maybe tightened some of the elements of the narrative, tightened the opening area. I think the opening tutorial was way too long. It took way too long to get into things. But I love the story bits. I loved seeing Zelda and Link together. Like every moment those two shared on, you know, the screen. As, you know, whatever amount that was used, because I am trying to be slightly spoiler-free to a degree, I guess. But like every moment those two were on the screen was absolutely masterful and just perfect. Seriously, like every single time those two were sharing the screen was just awesome. They're a great team. They're really cool to see together. It was awesome. There were some moments that I felt, you know, you could have maybe made the player feel a bit more powerful, and, you know, it felt like they were constantly taking away cool stuff by making me, you know, getting something cool and then not feeling like I was very strong of a character, which is a bit disappointing. Because, like I said, the combat in this one feels ridiculous. Like a basic enemy just, like, absolutely annihilates you. And I know Breath of the Wild had, like, a good sort of difficulty edge to it for sure, but I don't remember it being so insanely difficult where it's like, you know, like that. Like that's just it's too much, honestly. Even with like the armor and stuff I have, that's too much. And that can get really tiring because it's like, you know, I sit there and I'm like, well, the heart system doesn't make sense. If you're just gonna get insta killed, you might as well get rid of the hearts, right? And it's like, sure, I could collect more hearts, but it's like I literally get one-shotted when I've sat there and grinded shrines for like hours and hours and hours. So it's like, you know, it's crazy. And I do notice in this one too that there tends to be a little bit less of an emphasis on combat, which doesn't help you when you do have an enemy that you come across and that enemy is ridiculously strong, where it does insta-kill you because you're just not used to it. Like in Breath of the Wild, they had like these roaming, you know, sort of creatures, and you face combat more. Whereas in this one, you'll have like really long stretches of just like nothing happening, and you're just kind of walking in the world or riding in the world. And to me, that's a little less interesting. And, you know, I do get the whole idea of, like, it's fun to traverse, it's fun to explore. That was actually one of my favorite parts of the game, was this, like, segment of time where I was just going around doing shrines, just visiting different spots, seeing the open world. That was really cool to me. But, like, when you are going and actually going to different places, it's just sort of, like, kind of, again, tedious and tiresome to get there. So it is a really great game in terms of the amount of content you get. If you're a big Zelda fan and you like this new take on Zelda, it's a lot more of that. There are some pacing issues and, you know, technical problems. Like, technically, this game does not run greatly. Like, it plays fine and it's definitely playable, but yeah, I definitely did desire something a little bit smoother for performance. But at the end of the day, for a Switch title, this really does push what the Switch can do, but it also shows the extreme limitations that were already maxed out when Breath of the Wild came out. And you know, it might be weird to mention the predecessor so much, but when you have a game that so heavily leans on the legacy of the title that came before it, perhaps more so than literally any Zelda title that you know came prior, you do sit there and you do kind of think about, you know, the differences between them because they are such tight titles. And I think that's sort of a fine sort of chatter comparison to make, is that is, you know, sort of a big part of this. So another thing is when you're playing the game, you unlock these environmental kind of individuals through these tower areas. I do wish they would have maybe adjusted the controls a little bit for these individuals. It would have been cool to have like a Guardians of the Galaxy type setup where it's like I hold, say, L, and then I press one of the buttons to activate their abilities. Because it could be really annoying when I'm in the heat of combat and there's like these, you know, multiple individuals that are with me, and like I can't sort of control them, if that makes sense, and I'm getting killed because I'm trying to, you know, control one of these people, and like I clicked the wrong person. Like I wanted to click the rolling guy and I can't seem to click him, and you know, I think they could have revamped how you control your squad mates a little bit more. I think that would have been better. Like again, the performance just tanking. Spotty, no! And, you know, another part of it is the weapons breaking constantly gets a little annoying, and that's the thing, is it's like there's a lot of, like, little annoyances in this game that sort of bother me, and it feels tedious and tiring, and it just, like, sort of goes on and on and on in that regard. But as I said, if you really like this style of play, you'll love this game. You know, if you love Breath of the Wild, you'll be like, okay, this is a little bit more difficult, but it's more of that, and I really like that. And if it's not your type of game, it's really not going to be your type of game. But there is, as I've said multiple times, something to marvel at in terms of the amount of gameplay you get out of this scale of the world, the revamping they've done in order to add so many new locations and physics and adjustments to the world. It's definitely something that will feel familiar to you if you've played its predecessor, but it's also something that will feel fresh, just because there is so much adjusted and added to it. And it is something where I do sit there and I ponder the future of seeing, once again, this on a more powerful platform down the road. I think this game could really, really shine in a way that I feel like the Switch is almost limiting its full potential, which is an intriguing concept. As performance does matter to me quite a bit, you know, that is something I think about a lot when I play games. And it's just like, it's hard to do a combative situation in this game, and it's not even, you know, stable 30 FPS. That does bother me a bit. A little more so than probably others will do, or will care about. But as a Switch title, it is also like, you know, that is what the Switch is, right? Performance-wise. So, yeah, it's an interesting mixed bag there. So I like what they did with this game. I like a lot of the concepts of this game. I like the storytelling and the narrative elements of this seem hugely improved over Breath of the Wild. Like, for me, that was a big sticking point for Breath of the Wild, was just like there was not enough storytelling elements for me. And this one really does actually push to actually add cinematics and moments and character development, and like I said, I love the interactions between Link and Zelda. I think they're fantastic in this, like really, really cool, really, really well done. And it was just so neat to see those two sort of, I guess, interact in a way that we haven't really seen in Zelda games. At least I feel we haven't really seen them interact like they do in this one. Like, it's really cool to see that kind of play out. So yeah, there's a lot to love in this game. There's some really annoying, frustrating moments that drive me crazy. But I think by the end of it, oh, there goes the Master Sword. You'll have had a pretty rewarding time if you do sit there and stick with it. If this is your type of game, you'll have a blast with it. Well, there goes the Master Sword. It's gone forever. I don't know. There's a lot to enjoy, and a lot to discover, and a lot to find, and a lot to play, and lots of secrets, and lots of hidden things, and lots of stuff for you to gather, and lots of stuff for you to dive into. It's the largest Zelda game I think they've ever done by far. It's Breath of the Wild, but even bigger and massiver, and that will either be incredibly exciting for you or incredibly daunting, depending on the type of player you are. And yeah, the Tears of the Kingdom.